Eliza Johnson sat at her old piano, her fingers moving across the keys with grace and purpose. The small apartment filled with music as the morning sun warmed her face through the window. She could not see the light, but she could feel its warmth on her skin. Eliza had been blind since birth, but in her world of darkness, music gave her everything she needed to see. "That was beautiful," said a voice from the doorway. It was Donna, her neighbor who helped her with groceries and mail. "Thank you," Eliza said with a smile. "I'm working on a new piece for my students." Eliza taught piano to children at the community center 3 days a week. Most of her students faced challenges of their own, some with learning disabilities, others from homes where music lessons would otherwise be impossible. Teaching gave her purpose beyond her own playing. "Well, it sounds perfect to me," Donna said, setting down a small package on the table. "This came for you. Looks official." Eliza's heart quickened. "Could you read it for me, please?" Donna opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. "It's from the North American Music Conservatory. They're inviting you to perform at their annual showcase next month. Says here the dean personally requested you." Eliza's hands froze above the keys. The North American Music Conservatory was the most prestigious music institution in the country. Their annual showcase featured only the finest musicians and was attended by critics, composers, and music lovers from around the world. "Catherine," Eliza whispered. Catherine Wright had been her friend in college before becoming the dean of the conservatory. They had lost touch over the years, but Catherine had heard Eliza play at a small recital last year. "I can't believe she remembered me. This is huge, Eliza," Donna said, reading further. "It says you'll be performing before the main act. Victor Harmon. Even Eliza, who paid little attention to celebrity, knew that name. He was the most celebrated pianist of the decade, famous not only on Earth but throughout the colonized parts of the solar system. His recordings sold millions and his concerts sold out within minutes of announcement. "I need to practice," Eliza said, suddenly feeling both excited and nervous. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Eliza practiced for hours each day, preparing a program of classical pieces she had perfected over the years. She arranged for her friend Sam Peters to accompany her to New York as her assistant. The day before they left, Eliza reached into her drawer and took out a simple hairpin. To anyone looking, it appeared to be nothing special, just a vintage piece, with a small blue stone. But Eliza knew its true nature. The stone wasn't a stone at all, but a neural enhancer given to her by a Lauritian musician named Girai. 3 years ago, when the aliens from Proxima Centauri made peaceful contact with Earth, they had shared some of their technology and culture. Most exchanges were public and celebrated worldwide, but Eliza's gift had been private. Girai had visited her small studio during a cultural exchange program. He had listened to her play, his alien senses perceiving something in her music that even humans could not. "Your blindness is not a limitation," he had told her in his musical voice. "It is a different way of experiencing the universe." He had given her the enhancer, disguised as a hairpin to avoid detection. "This will help you translate what you already sense into something your species has never heard before." For 3 years, Eliza had practiced in secret with the device, learning to use it to compose pieces that blended human emotion with alien harmonic structures. She had never used it in public. The conservatory showcase would be the first time. She tucked the pin into her bag, not for the classical program she had prepared, but just in case. When they arrived at the conservatory, Sam described the grand building to her as they walked up the steps. "It's all white stone and glass with huge columns at the entrance. There are posters everywhere with Victor Harmon's face on them." Dean Catherine Wright met them personally, embracing Eliza warmly. "I'm so glad you accepted my invitation," she said. "Your playing has only grown more beautiful since college." "Thank you for remembering me," Eliza replied. "How could I forget? You played with more heart than anyone I've ever known." Catherine said, "Let me show you to the practice room. You can get comfortable with the piano there before tonight's rehearsal." As they walked through the halls, Eliza could hear whispers. She was used to this. People often whispered when they saw her, walking with her cane. Some voices sounded curious, others skeptical. Is that the blind woman who's opening for Victor? How did she get this opportunity? Must be some kind of special program. Eliza lifted her chin and kept walking. She had heard such comments all her life. The practice piano was magnificent. A Steinway concert grand with perfect action and tone. Eliza spent hours getting familiar with its touch, playing sections of her program and making small adjustments to her interpretation based on the room's acoustics. As evening approached, Sam returned to guide her to the main hall for the technical rehearsal. They were almost there when loud voices reached them from around the corner. A charity case, Catherine. Really? The voice was male, cultured, with an edge of disdain. I reviewed the program. An unknown blind woman playing Chopin before my performance? Victor, Eliza Johnson is incredibly talented, came Catherine's firm reply. I invited her on musical merit alone. I'm sure your intentions are noble, Victor Harmon said, his voice dripping with condescension. But this is the North American Music Conservatory, not a community talent show. The audience pays to hear excellence. And they will, Catherine insisted. I hope she doesn't damage the Steinway, Victor said with a laugh. Those keys deserve proper hands, professional hands, seeing hands. Eliza stopped walking, her body tensing. Sam squeezed her arm gently. He's just an arrogant jerk, Sam whispered. Don't listen to him. But Eliza had spent a lifetime listening. Her ears caught not just words, but the emotions behind them. Victor's voice carried something beyond mere arrogance. There was fear there too, fear of something different, something that might challenge his perfect world. It's all right, Eliza said quietly. Let's continue. As they turned the corner, the conversation ahead stopped abruptly. Eliza could sense the sudden tension in the air. Ah, here she is now, Catherine said with forced brightness. Eliza Johnson, I'd like you to meet Victor Harmon. Ms. Johnson, Victor said, his voice now carefully polite but cold. Welcome to the conservatory. Mr. Harmon, Eliza replied evenly, extending her hand in his general direction. I look forward to hearing you play tonight. There was a brief pause before he took her hand in a loose, brief handshake. Yes. Well, good luck with your performance, he said dismissively. As Victor walked away, Catherine apologized. I'm sorry about that. He can be difficult. No need to apologize, Eliza said. The piano doesn't care who plays it. It responds to whoever touches its keys with respect. Inside, though, a decision formed in Eliza's mind. She reached into her bag and felt for the Lauritian hairpin. Tonight she would not play the classical program she had prepared. Tonight she would play what the world had never heard before. Eliza sat alone in the small practice room, the Lauritian hairpin now fastened in her dark curls. Her fingers hovered over the piano keys as she took a deep breath. The moment she touched the first key, she felt the neural enhancer activate. A subtle warmth spread from the pin through her scalp and down her spine, connecting her mind to the piano in ways no human had experienced before the Lauritians came to Earth. The practice room disappeared from her awareness. In its place, Eliza perceived music as living architecture. Sound became shapes, emotions transformed into colors, and harmonies existed as mathematical patterns she could feel and manipulate. This was how the Lauritians experienced music, and through their gift, Eliza could briefly join them in this perception. What are you playing? The voice startled her. Eliza lifted her hands from the keys, and the enhanced perception faded. She hadn't heard anyone enter the room. Just something I've been working on, she said, turning her head toward the voice. Who's there? Laura Barnes, second violinist with the Conservatory Orchestra. The woman's voice was curious without the judgment Eliza often heard. I've never heard anything like that before. It wasn't classical, was it? Eliza smiled. No, it's something new. An experiment with different harmonic structures. It was... Laura paused, searching for words. It made me feel like I was floating in space, looking at stars being born. How do you create that effect? Before Eliza could answer, the door opened again and Sam's familiar footsteps entered. "Eliza, there you are. The rehearsal starts in 15 minutes. He noticed Laura. "Oh, hello. I should go," Laura said. "But Ms. Johnson, whatever you were playing, that's what you should perform tonight. It's revolutionary." Her footsteps retreated and the door closed. "What was that about?" Sam asked. Eliza reached up and touched the hairpin. "Sam, I'm changing my program for tonight." "What? But you've been practicing the Chopin for weeks." "I know, but I'm going to play my own composition instead." Sam was quiet for a moment. "The one with the thing?" He knew about the Lauritian enhancer. He was the only human besides Eliza who did. "Yes. It's time, Sam. Music is supposed to build bridges. What better bridge than one between human and Lauritian expression? But Victor Harmon will be in the audience. All those critics, if they don't understand, they might not understand it," Eliza agreed. "But they will feel it. That's what matters." The technical rehearsal went smoothly. Eliza played a simple piece, saving her true performance for the evening. The sound engineers were pleased with the piano's acoustics, and Catherine seemed relieved that there were no issues. As Eliza and Sam left the stage, they passed Victor Harmon entering for his own rehearsal. "Break a leg tonight," Victor said, his tone suggesting he meant it literally. Sam tensed beside her, but Eliza just nodded. "You as well, Mr. Harmon." Back in the dressing room, Eliza sat quietly while Sam described the concert hall to her in detail. The rows of plush red seats, the ornate ceiling, the exact number of steps from the wings to the piano. This was their routine before every performance, helping Eliza create a mental map of the space. "The piano is positioned slightly left of center stage," Sam explained. 14 steps from where you'll enter. The bench is already adjusted to your height." A knock at the door interrupted them. Catherine entered with a program in hand. "Everything okay, Eliza? Do you need anything before tonight?" "I'm fine, thank you. But there is one thing. I'd like to change my program." Catherine's surprise was audible in her sharp intake of breath. "Change it? But the programs are already printed." "I know, and I'm sorry. But instead of the Chopin pieces, I'd like to play an original composition. It's called Proxima Dawn." There was a pause before Catherine responded. "That's unusual at such a formal event. May I ask why?" Eliza turned her face toward her old friend. "Do you remember in college when you told me my greatest strength as a musician was that I didn't just play notes? I felt them in a way others couldn't?" "I remember," Catherine said softly. "This piece is the purest expression of how I feel music. Please, Catherine, trust me." Another pause, then a sigh. "All right, I'll make an announcement before you play. What should I say about the piece?" "Just the title is enough. The music will speak for itself." After Catherine left, Sam helped Eliza change into her performance dress, a simple black gown with subtle touches of blue that matched the stone in her hairpin. As she got ready, Eliza could hear the concert hall filling with people. The murmur of voices grew, punctuated by occasional laughter and the rustle of programs. "Nervous?" Sam asked as he guided her toward the stage entrance. "No," Eliza replied, truthfully. "For the first time, I feel ready to show the world who I really am." They waited in the wings as Catherine walked onto the stage to welcome the audience. Through the speakers, Eliza could hear her introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the North American Music Conservatory's annual showcase. We have a slight change to our opening program tonight. Our first performer, Eliza Johnson, will be playing an original composition titled Proxima Dawn." There was polite applause as Catherine continued. "Ms. Johnson is a remarkably talented pianist who teaches music to children with special needs. Please join me in welcoming her to our stage." The applause grew as Sam guided Eliza to the edge of the stage. From here, she would walk alone. 14 steps, Sam whispered. "The piano is waiting." Eliza stepped onto the stage, her cane tapping lightly as she counted her steps. The applause continued, tinged with curiosity and, from some quarters, skepticism. She could almost feel Victor Harmon's dismissive gaze from the front row. When she reached the piano, she found the bench exactly where Sam had said it would be. She sat down, adjusted her position, and placed her hands in her lap. The hall grew quiet, waiting. Eliza took a moment to gather herself. The Lyrician enhancer warmed against her scalp, ready to transform her perception once she began to play. What would happen when she shared this music with hundreds of people? Jirai had told her the enhancer would affect not just her, but those who listened, allowing them a glimpse of how the Lyricians experienced reality. She leaned toward the microphone that had been placed near the piano. "Tonight I'd like to play an original composition called Proxima Dawn," she said simply. "It's dedicated to those who see with more than just their eyes." With that, she placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first notes were simple, a gentle melody that spoke of longing and distance, human music, familiar and safe. Then she allowed the enhancer to fully activate. Her fingers began to move in new patterns, creating harmonies that had never been played on an earth piano before. The boundaries between performer and instrument dissolved, and Eliza Johnson began to share her gift with the world. The concert hall fell completely silent as Eliza's music filled the space. The simple melody she started with began to transform. Her fingers moved across the keys in ways that defied normal human technique. The sounds that emerged from the grand piano should not have been possible from the instrument. Notes blended and stretched, harmonies layered in ways that made several music professors in the audience exchange confused glances. In the front row, Victor Harmon sat with his arms crossed. His expression changed from boredom to confusion, then to growing interest as the music continued to evolve. He leaned forward, watching Eliza's hands with intense focus. As a master pianist himself, he knew the piano's limitations. What he was hearing simply couldn't be played on a standard piano, and yet it was happening right before his eyes. Through the Lyrician enhancer, Eliza perceived the music as living energy. She shaped it like clay, building structures of sound that told the story of distant stars and the journey across space. The blue stone in her hairpin began to glow softly, though in the stage lighting only those paying close attention would notice. From the wings, Sam watched in amazement. He had heard Eliza practice with the enhancer before, but never like this. The music she created now was more complex, more alien, and yet somehow more deeply moving than anything she had played in private. As the piece progressed, something extraordinary began to happen in the concert hall. The neural patterns generated by the enhancer started to affect the audience. People who had been sitting still began to sway slightly. Some closed their eyes. Others stared with wide eyes, seeing colors that weren't there, feeling sensations that had no physical cause. A music critic in the third row found tears streaming down his face without knowing why. A composer 2 rows behind him frantically tried to note down what he was hearing, but found it impossible to capture on paper. A neuroscientist near the back of the hall realized with sudden clarity that the music was activating parts of her brain that normal music never touched. Catherine Wright stood at the side of the stage, one hand pressed against her mouth. She had known Eliza was talented, but this was beyond talent. This was something entirely new. In their special box seats, 3 Lyrician diplomats sat very still. They had come incognito, curious about Earth's music but not expecting anything remarkable. Now they communicated silently among themselves, their silver eyes wide with surprise. One of them, the eldest, nodded slowly. This human was bridging worlds in a way none of them had thought possible. The music continued to build. Eliza's hands moved faster, sometimes appearing to be in 2 places at once as the enhancer allowed her to access abilities beyond normal human coordination. The piano strings vibrated in new ways, producing overtones and undertones that created a 3-dimensional sound experience. Through the music, Eliza shared what it felt like to live in darkness yet perceive the world through sound and touch. She wove in patterns that represented the Lyrician journey across light years, the wonder of first contact, and the promise of what humans and aliens could create together. As she approached the climax of the piece, Eliza felt the enhancer working at full capacity. The stone glowed brighter, and the connection between her mind, the piano, and the audience deepened. For a brief moment, everyone in the hall experienced music as the Lyricians did, not just as sound, but as mathematics, emotion, color, and cosmic truth all at once. Victor Harmon gripped the armrests of his seat. The arrogance had melted from his face, replaced by wonder and humility. He had dedicated his life to music, had been called a genius and a master, yet he had never imagined music could be this. He felt like a child who had been playing with blocks only to discover someone building entire cities. In that moment, he understood what was happening. This blind woman wasn't just playing music. She was reshaping what music could be. And he, for all his fame and skill, was witnessing the birth of something that would change his art forever. The final movement of Proxima Dawn was gentle yet profound. Eliza brought the alien harmonies back toward human understanding, creating a bridge between the familiar and the unknown. Her fingers danced across the keys one last time, drawing out a sequence of notes that seemed to hang in the air even after she lifted her hands from the piano. Then silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The entire hall remained frozen in the moment, as if waking from a shared dream. Eliza sat quietly at the piano, her hands now resting in her lap. Though she couldn't see, she could feel the reaction of the audience through the absolute stillness that followed her performance. The enhancer allowed her to sense their emotions: shock, wonder, confusion, and something deeper: recognition. They had heard something true, even if they didn't fully understand it. 30 seconds passed in complete silence. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the hall, someone began to clap. Others joined, tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Within moments, the entire audience was on their feet. The applause grew to a roar, punctuated by shouts and even a few sobs. Sam rushed onto the stage to guide Eliza for her bow, but found himself wiping tears from his eyes. "Eliza," he whispered as he reached her. "I don't have words." She squeezed his arm. "Is it what I hoped?" "More," he said, his voice breaking. "They're all standing, every single person." Eliza stood and faced the audience, bowing gracefully as the applause continued to grow rather than diminish. People who had never encountered her before now called her name. Critics who had come to evaluate technique found themselves responding with pure emotion instead. From his seat in the front row, Victor Harmon stared at the woman on stage. His scheduled performance would follow hers, but he knew with sudden clarity that nothing he played tonight would matter. No one would remember it, not after what they had just experienced. He should have felt anger or jealousy. Instead, he felt something unexpected: gratitude. In his pursuit of perfection, he had forgotten why he first fell in love with music as a child. Eliza Johnson had just reminded him. As the applause finally began to subside, Catherine Wright stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the microphone, her voice still unsteady with emotion, "Eliza Johnson." The applause surged again. Catherine waited for it to quiet before continuing. "We will take a brief intermission before our next performer." As Sam led Eliza off the stage, she heard footsteps approaching quickly from the side. A hand touched her arm gently. "Ms. Johnson." It was Victor Harmon's voice, but transformed, humble, almost reverent. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Eliza nodded, curious about what the famous pianist would say after ridiculing her just hours before. "I have never been more wrong about anything in my life," Victor said softly so only she and Sam could hear. "What you just played, it wasn't just music, it was the future." Eliza smiled. "Mr. Harmon, music has always been more than what we limited it to. Sometimes we just need new ways of listening." "Will you teach me?" he asked, the question bursting from him with unexpected urgency. "Whatever that was, I need to understand it." Before Eliza could answer, a commotion arose in the corridor behind them. The Lyrician diplomats, no longer hiding their presence, were approaching. The three Lyricians moved with fluid grace as they approached Eliza, Victor, and Sam. They were tall and slender, with silver-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the backstage lights. Their large eyes, completely silver with no visible pupils, focused intently on Eliza. The eldest Lyrician, who wore a formal robe with symbols that marked him as an ambassador, stepped forward. Eliza Johnson, he said, his voice musical even when speaking English. I am Ambassador Nalari. What you have done tonight was unexpected. Sam moved closer to Eliza protectively, but she placed a gentle hand on his arm. Ambassador, Eliza greeted with a slight bow. I hope I have not caused any trouble. The lyrician made a flowing gesture with his long fingers. Not trouble. But questions, yes. The neural enhancer you used was given to you by Jirai, was it not? Eliza touched the hairpin, which had stopped glowing but remained warm against her scalp. Yes. He gave it to me 3 years ago after hearing me play. He said music could be a bridge between our species. Victor Harmon looked between Eliza and the aliens with growing understanding. The hairpin, he whispered. That's how you created those sounds. Ambassador Nalari turned his silver gaze to Victor. The enhancer does not create the music, human musician. It only unlocks abilities already present in the mind and connects them to the instrument. What you heard was Eliza Johnson's true music, freed from physical limitations. Catherine Wright approached, her face showing both awe and concern. Ambassador Nalari, we had no idea you would be attending tonight. This is an honor. The second lyrician, slightly shorter and wearing the markings of a cultural attaché, spoke up. We came quietly, curious about your human music. We did not expect to hear our own harmonics performed by human hands. The third lyrician, who wore the insignia of a scientist, studied Eliza with particular interest. The neural patterns you generated through the enhancer affected the entire audience. A most fascinating phenomenon. The human brain should not be able to process such complex musical mathematics. But it did, Eliza said simply. Music speaks to something deeper than conscious thought. That's why it can cross the barriers between our species. A small crowd of musicians, critics, and audience members had gathered at a respectful distance, watching the exchange between Eliza and the lyricians with fascination. Phones were out, recording the historic moment. Ambassador Nalari noticed the growing crowd and lowered his voice. Jirai broke protocol by giving you the enhancer. It was meant only for lyrician use, but tonight proves his judgment was sound. You have done something remarkable, Eliza Johnson. What happens now? Sam asked, still standing protectively close to Eliza. The cultural attaché made a gesture that might have been a smile. Now, we must reconsider our approach to cultural exchange. Music may be a more powerful tool for understanding than our scientific teams believed. Victor Harmon, who had been listening intently, suddenly stepped forward. Excuse me, Ambassador, he said with uncharacteristic humility. I'm scheduled to perform next, but after what we've just experienced, it seems inadequate. Ambassador Nalari tilted his head in a questioning gesture. I propose something different, Victor continued. With your permission, and Eliza's, I would like to attempt a collaboration. Not with the enhancer, I understand I'm not ready for that, but a human lyrician duet. Perhaps one of you could join me on stage? The lyricians exchanged glances, communicating silently in their own way. A bold suggestion, the ambassador said, but perhaps appropriate for this night of surprises. The cultural attaché nodded. I am trained in musical arts. I could join you, human musician. Catherine Wright looked stunned. A live duet between a human and lyrician performer? That would be historic. The idea spread quickly through the gathering crowd, and excited murmurs filled the backstage area. A reporter who had sneaked past security was already transmitting the news to her network. Eliza smiled, hearing the excitement around her. Mr. Harmon, that's a wonderful idea. The audience is ready for something new after what they experienced. Victor turned to her. Will you join us? A trio rather than a duet? Before Eliza could answer, the lyrician scientist stepped closer. The enhancer requires time to recharge after such intense use. It would be unwise for Eliza Johnson to perform again tonight. He's right, Eliza said, feeling the tiredness spreading through her body now that the performance was over. But I would be honored to help prepare the piece. Within minutes, the plan was set. Catherine announced to the waiting audience that there would be a change to the program. Instead of Victor Harmon's solo performance, They would witness the first ever public musical collaboration between a human and a lyrician. The news spread beyond the concert hall as the story was picked up by media outlets. By the time Victor and the cultural attaché took the stage 30 minutes later, the live stream of the event had millions of viewers worldwide. Eliza sat in the front row, guided there by Sam. Though she couldn't see the performers, she could hear every note as Victor and the lyrician created something new together. It wasn't as revolutionary as what she had played. The lyrician performed on a traditional instrument from their world that produced haunting, ethereal tones. But the beauty of their collaboration moved the audience deeply. When they finished, the applause was thunderous once again. Victor, looking more alive than he had in years, gestured for Eliza to join them on stage for the final bow. With Sam's help, she made her way up the steps and stood between the human pianist and the lyrician musician, as they acknowledged the audience together. As the three of them stood there, Ambassador Nalari appeared at the edge of the stage. He approached the microphone with a dignified slowness. "People of Earth," he began, his musical voice carrying easily through the hall. "Tonight marks a new chapter in relations between our worlds. When we came to your planet 3 years ago, we hoped to find common ground. Thanks to these musicians, we have found more than that. We have found common soul." The audience erupted in applause again. Reporters rushed to get better positions for their cameras. History was being made, and everyone knew it. Later, as the excitement began to settle, Eliza sat quietly in her dressing room. Sam had gone to bring her some water, leaving her alone with her thoughts. A gentle knock at the door interrupted her reflection. "Come in," she called. She heard the door open and recognized Victor's footsteps. "Ms. Johnson," he said, his voice still carrying traces of wonder, "I wanted to thank you, not just for what you played tonight, but for changing how I understand music itself." Eliza smiled. "You played beautifully with the lyrician. You adapted quickly. Because of what you showed was possible." He paused. "The lyricians have invited me to study with them for 6 months on their Earth Embassy compound. They've invited you as well." Eliza's breath caught. "To study with them?" "No," Victor said. "To teach alongside them. They believe you understand something about music that even some of their own people have forgotten." Before Eliza could respond, there was another knock, and Sam returned with Ambassador Nalari. The ambassador's voice was solemn as he addressed her. "Eliza Johnson, your music has opened doors we thought would take generations to unlock. We have a proposal for you." 1 year later, Eliza Johnson stood at the center of a circular stage. Around her, in concentric rings, sat 300 students from 27 countries and 2 planets. This was the opening day of the Interstellar Conservatory of Music, and Eliza was about to give the first official lesson. The building itself was a marvel of human and lyrician design. The walls curved in ways that created perfect acoustics from any position. The ceiling opened to the sky, letting in natural light that shifted the room's colors throughout the day. At the center, where Eliza stood, was a unique instrument. Part earth piano, part lyrician sound sculptor, designed specifically for teaching the new harmonic language that was emerging between the species. "Welcome," Eliza said, her voice carrying easily to every corner of the space. "Today we begin a journey that none of us could have imagined a year ago." She wore the lyrician hairpin openly now. After her historic concert, the neural enhancer had been officially recognized as a cultural exchange tool. 50 more had been created, given to carefully selected musicians around the world. Victor Harmon wore one in his lapel as he sat among the teachers at the edge of the room. "Music has always been a language that transcends barriers," Eliza continued. "But until now, we believed it was limited by the physics of our instruments and the biology of our bodies. The lyricians have shown us that music exists beyond these limitations." Ambassador Nalari, seated in the honored guests section, nodded his silver head in approval. His proposal a year ago had been ambitious, the creation of the first school dedicated to teaching both human and lyrician music, with Eliza as its principal instructor. The United Nations and the Lyrician High Council had approved funding within a month, and construction had begun immediately. Each of you has been chosen because you showed particular sensitivity to the new harmonics, Eliza said to the students. Some of you are professional musicians. Others have never played an instrument before. That difference no longer matters. We are all beginners in this new form of expression. Sam sat nearby, no longer just Eliza's assistant, but the conservatory's head of student affairs. He watched with pride as his friend addressed the historic gathering with confidence and grace. Today, I want to demonstrate what is possible when we let go of our old understanding of music, Eliza said. I will play a composition created jointly by human and Lyrician musicians. It is called The Bridge Between Stars. She sat at the hybrid instrument and placed her hands on its surface. The neural enhancer activated, glowing softly in her hair. As she began to play, the room transformed. The sounds that emerged were even more extraordinary than those she had produced at her first concert. The instrument responded to her touch in ways that seemed to defy physics. Notes bent and curved through the air. Harmonies formed three-dimensional patterns that listeners could almost see. But the most remarkable change was in the audience. As the music filled the space, the neural enhancers worn by the human students synchronized with Eliza's. For the first time, they began to perceive music as the Lyricians did, as living architecture, as mathematics made beautiful, as emotion given form. The Lyrician students, meanwhile, experienced something equally profound. Through the specially designed acoustics, they felt the human emotional response to music in a way their species never had before. Where they had always experienced music primarily as complex patterns, they now felt its power to evoke joy, sorrow, hope, and wonder. When Eliza finished playing, the silence that followed was filled with understanding. Humans and Lyricians looked at each other with new recognition. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. I saw the music, she said, her voice filled with wonder. I didn't just hear it. I saw it as colors and shapes. A Lyrician student made the gesture that humans had learned meant agreement. And I felt the music in ways I cannot describe in your language. It was personal in a way our music has not been. Victor Harmon rose from his seat and approached the center of the room. In the year since Eliza's performance, he had changed profoundly. Gone was the arrogant star, replaced by a dedicated student and teacher. He had spent 6 months at the Lyrician embassy, learning their musical traditions before joining the conservatory project. What you've just experienced is only the beginning, he told the students. I was once considered one of the finest pianists on earth, but after hearing Eliza play that first night, I realized I had only scratched the surface of what music can be. Eliza smiled at the memory. Victor had become not just a colleague, but a friend. His fame and connections had helped secure funding and support for the conservatory when some had questioned investing so heavily in what they saw as an experimental art form. Over the next 3 years, Eliza explained, you will learn to play instruments designed for both human and Lyrician physiology. You will compose music that can be fully appreciated by both species. And most importantly, you will help create a new kind of communication, one that goes deeper than words. After the orientation session ended, Eliza met with Ambassador Nalari and the leaders of the United Nations Cultural Committee in her office. The walls were lined with awards she had received over the past year, including the Nobel Peace Prize for her contribution to interspecies understanding. The first day exceeded our expectations, the ambassador said. The neural synchronization between students was stronger than our scientists predicted. Music has always been about connection, Eliza replied. We're just expanding who we can connect with. The UN Cultural Director looked pleased. The live stream of today's demonstration was watched by over 2 billion people. Applications to the conservatory have increased tenfold in just the past hour. Eliza nodded. We'll need to expand sooner than we planned. After the meeting, Eliza took a quiet moment in the garden that had been designed with both Earth and Proxima Centauri plants. Sam found her there, sitting on a bench beside a fountain. Quite a journey from that small apartment with your old piano, he said, joining her. Sometimes I still can't believe it, Eliza admitted. From teaching a few children to this. You always saw more than others could, Sam said. Even before the enhancer. Eliza touched the hairpin thoughtfully. That's what I try to teach them. The technology helps, but the music was always there, waiting to be discovered. We just needed to learn how to listen differently. As if to emphasize her point, a group of students had gathered near the center fountain. 2 humans and 3 lyricians were experimenting with the acoustic properties of falling water, creating impromptu music that combined techniques from both worlds. Their laughter and musical exclamations mingled in the evening air. "Do you ever miss your privacy?" Sam asked. "Your life before you became the most famous musician on 2 planets?" Eliza smiled. "Sometimes. But then I hear moments like that." She gestured toward the students. "And I remember why this matters." From the conservatory building, the sound of Victor working with another group of students drifted into the garden. He was teaching them a technique that combined classical human piano with Lyrician temporal harmonics, something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "Tomorrow I start working with the outreach program," Eliza said, "taking this technology to people who never had access to musical education before, children with disabilities, communities without resources." "Your true passion," Sam observed. "Yes, because music belongs to everyone. And now, more than ever, everyone belongs to music." As the twin suns of Earth's day and Proxima's projected light set over the conservatory, Eliza Johnson sat peacefully in the garden. Around her, the future of music was being born, a future where what had once been a blind woman's unique perception had become a bridge between worlds.